there's two major buckets within sustainability, at least, which are carbon neutral and net zero. And those have very different meanings. And for anybody that's doing the Science-Based Targets Initiative, it really requires you to squeeze as much carbon out of your operations as possible, and your supply chain, both upstream supply chain and your suppliers, and the downstream use of your products or downstream sales channels of your products. And I think the thing that most companies, when they start to think about how energy fits within that, because there's many facets that fit within that, but energy in particular is a huge part of these carbon emissions commitments, is do they want to do the work like the Olympic athletes do, or do they want to offload it to someone else? And doing the work, you're going to receive the most benefits.
Dan, great to be on another episode of Renewable Rise together.
Absolutely. Good to be back, and excited to dig into today's content.
Yeah, and it's going to be a fun one. You know, we come into the end of the Olympics, so we've just closed them out. And I think we've both reflected on it, and there's a huge amount of parallels between what we've just witnessed and experienced with what companies are going through with respect to the energy transition and the opportunities associated with it. So wanted to kick us off before we get into that conversation, Dan, with just a few stats that really stood out for me. 206 countries and territories represented at the Olympics this time around, the most ever. Really impressive seeing such a diverse range of athletes and support crew coming together and, you know, having a really flawless, fun, exciting event together. 15 new events this year. And you know, some of them were better received than others, but it's great to see the Olympics continuing to innovate and adapt and bring in new sports and new athletes. 32 world records, which is incredible. And this is the first time that the Olympics has essentially had gender parity. So 51% of the athletes were male, 49% female. So amazing to see the progress made there. But I think we'll get into some of our highlights, Dan, around personal achievements. And it's incredible seeing these athletes coming together and delivering after years of hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears. But we often overlook the legacy that the Olympics leave behind in these countries. And I think a few that stood out for me, which are super impressive. Every primary school in France is now going to have 30 minutes of daily activity as part of its school. You know, when you compare that to, say, here in California, our kids' schools can't even afford the PE teacher. And so I think we're going to see far better health, nutrition, and probably the Olympic athletes of the future as a result of some of that impact. The Olympic Village itself, that's just been used for the Olympics, is now going to be transitioned to 2,800 apartments, and 25% of that will be social housing, which, you know, is super important. 30,000 people, as a result of working in planning the Olympics, have now been trained in new skills, and we'll be able to take them into new careers, which I think was actually really impressive. And on the sustainability side, 95% of the venues used were either existing venues or they were temporary. And I think from an energy and sustainability perspective, this is huge because often the biggest impacts are as a result of building new infrastructure. So I thought that was amazing. Dan, what were the highlight events for you?
It was a fun Olympics. Definitely did not catch as much as I would have hoped. A couple of the standouts for me, and candidly, I did not sit through the whole 4 hours of the event, but the women's distance cycling was pretty awesome to watch, and especially the story behind it. Kristen Faulkner, the U.S. Olympian who ended up winning the race, was not a lifetime cycler, just started cycling back in 2017. Actually wasn't even slated to race in that race, was an alternate and got called in either morning of or the day before to come and race. But I think the interesting thing was really her dedication to the training over the previous several years, and then also her plan of when she was able to finally get up to the front to just blow past the other three competitors that were up towards the front, knowing that they were all three from different countries, that they wouldn't necessarily work together, and caught them all off guard and surprised them. So that was a super exciting one for me. And then the other one, you know, I'm a basketball fan, particularly Steph Curry fan from the north of the Bay Area. I've been a longtime Warriors fan. And men's basketball was super fun. And I think it's interesting, year after year, the men's basketball team comes in with extremely high expectations. The expectation is gold at all times, and so it's they can't misstep. They've got to put in the work. They do have a very stacked team, but I think it's also parallel to a lot of the mega, Fortune 100 large corporates out there, and all the expectations that sit on them to do the right thing and perform and lead the world. And so it was exciting to see them come together, pull it out. Particularly my guy Steph having some pretty amazing games in the semifinal and the finals game. So those are the ones that stood out for me. How about you, Gareth?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely a cycling fan, as you know, and the one that stood out for me was the men's mountain biking final. So Pitcock came through on one of the last few corners to pass his main rival to win the race, but he had suffered a puncture, he had suffered multiple setbacks, and he'd ridden back through the whole field in really impressive style. And I think it just showed to me, we all go in with a plan and we're going to face setbacks, and it's going to be the same with the energy transition. As businesses, we're going to make plans, we're going to get after it. There's going to be lots of wins. There's going to be a few bumps along the way, but actually being able to put your head down, grind it out, stick to the plan, believe in your training. I think that was super impressive. And Noah Lyles, for sure, like stepping up to the 100 meters, a lot of smack talk beforehand, a lot of confidence. He laid down a lot of commitments and promises. And I think this has huge parallels to, you mentioned big corporates, setting net zero targets and actually now needing to come out and hit them. And he had set himself up and he delivered under pressure. And I thought that was super impressive. And you can't ignore Snoop Dogg, the hype man. How good was it seeing him kind of get everyone really excited about the Olympics? And I think for me also, seeing him, be truly human and taking the mickey out of himself. So he did this swimming segment with Michael Phelps, and watching Snoop Dogg trying to swim, it was pretty funny, but he made fun of himself. And it just highlighted, we all can't naturally step up and do these incredible things. We have to put in the work. We have to train hard. To be an Olympic athlete, we need to eat clean, train, invest time and effort into having the right coaches, the right data, the right insights. We need to have the right equipment. And then we need to work the plan every day and adapt with it. And then you maybe set yourself up with a chance to going on to being a part of the Olympics, let alone even winning a medal. So I thought it was super awesome to see all the extremes of those who profess to not have a clue right through to those absolutely crushing it. And, unfortunately, with any of these events, Dan, we often see those that are also willing to win at all costs and take shortcuts. And, performance enhancing drugs have been around sports for a long time. And we saw the massive downsides and impacts of that through the likes of the Tour de France in the 2000s with Lance Armstrong. And, I think what we want to talk today about is, when we work the plan, we do it right, we put in the work, there's huge value to be achieved. But when we take shortcuts, we can really, we get that short-term dopamine hit of stood on the top step of the podium with the medal around us and all the marketing excitement. And then very quickly that smacks you in the face and you're left with a tainted reputation, and you impact not only yourself, but all of those around you. And so, Dan, do you want to talk through why we're talking about the Olympics today, what the parallels are to corporate sustainability and the energy transition?
Certainly. The thing that in preparing for this, you and I were chatting about is the big goals that are set out there, and corporates are largely expected to do it these days. And there's a variety of pathways towards getting there. And I think first and foremost, companies, are many have already made their goal or their commitment. Others are in the process of doing so, and others are thinking, man, maybe we need to go down this path. And I think first and foremost is understanding what they're committing to. There's two major buckets within sustainability, at least, which are carbon neutral and net zero. And those have very different meanings. And for anybody that's doing the Science-Based Targets Initiative, it really requires you to squeeze as much carbon out of your operations as possible, and your supply chain, both upstream supply chain and your suppliers, and the downstream use of your products or downstream sales channels of your products. And I think the thing that most companies, when they start to think about how energy fits within that, because there's many facets that fit within that, but energy in particular is a huge part of these carbon emissions commitments, is do they want to do the work like the Olympic athletes do, or do they want to offload it to someone else? And doing the work, you're going to receive the most benefits. Energy in particular has seemed to fallen into the sustainability bucket in many companies, where it's just viewed as a means to achieving a sustainability goal, when in reality, it's quite literally the fuel that powers our businesses. And there are so many different benefits when you do the work and do change your power systems that can be received across costs and reliability. And I know you're going to touch a bit on more on that in a minute. But one great example, or unfortunate example, maybe is a better way to put it, is one of the major top automakers in the world. They are on track to meet their 100% renewable electricity goal 10 years early. That's huge. Needs to be celebrated. Super excited to hear that. However, they've checked that box in many ways, or they're about to check that box. Yet, we've heard from folks on the inside that just for 1 minute of outage at one of their facilities can cost upwards of $1 million. $1 million per minute when they have an outage. Buying into offsite, large-scale renewables, solar, wind, and others are not going to solve for a problem when your local grid goes down. And that's where on-site energy comes into play. So, Gareth, maybe you can touch on a little bit of the benefits of actually doing the work. And what does that mean?
Yeah, well, I think to build on your point, Dan, I think the shortcuts to the energy transition are, let's just go and buy some carbon credit offsets. Someone else has protected some piece of property or built a renewable energy system, but we're not going to buy that energy. We're not going to invest in the asset, but we're going to buy the carbon credits to offset our own emissions. To your point, that gains us no operational benefits. Same with virtual PPAs. It's a financial contractual mechanism where, yes, you've supported in building additionality around building a new renewable energy facility, but you're not directly buying the power. And you're essentially on paper buying clean energy, but you're not reducing your own direct emissions. I think what we really want to highlight for business leaders thinking about this is, by taking those shortcuts, yes, you can stand on that top step of the podium and claim success, and you can get the marketing and the branding, and you can get that short-term maybe boost in stock price. But there are consequences to doing that. And we've seen companies suffer greenwashing impacts. We've also seen the reality that companies are now paying more for their energy, and they're paying to buy these offsets and carbon credits. And now you get the double whammy. So now not only have you set your business up for a risk profile in terms of your approach, you've also, from an operational perspective, impacted your margins even further. And so when we think about actually putting the work in, that comes in the form of energy efficiency, first of all. And like an Olympic athlete, this is definitely the non-glamorous foundational work. This is the stuff that you're doing day in, day out to ensure that you're lean, mean, flexible, and ready to do the work. And, as discussed with Josh on episode 48 recently, by actually going through energy efficiency at your facilities, within your premises, you can actually reduce your emissions and your costs by 40% straight off the bat. And so that's huge. When you think about energy being 5 to 40% of your operating costs, depending on the type of facility you are, in this commoditized landscape and in this inflationary landscape, being able to control a key input like energy and reduce those costs by so much is a massive win. So then when you combine it with on-site energy, this is now like training for your custom sport. So this is your 100 meters, this is your cycling event, this is your Snoop Dogg trying to become an Olympic swimmer. You need to actually really specifically train for your sport of choice. And on-site energy is about ensuring you generate and store energy in a way that is tailored to your specific business needs and objectives to realize true commercial benefits. And as we've discussed lots on the podcast, when we do this right, we not only reduce our operating costs, We allow ourselves the independence of not being solely reliant on the grid if there's a power outage. So now we have operational resilience. This allows us to meet our production targets, meet our customer expectations, deliver on our share price commitments. It gives us more flexibility and capacity within the business. So particularly as we electrify more of our businesses, we maybe want to electrify some of our fleets. We want to consider robotics. We want to use more artificial intelligence. We need more energy capacity. And if we're reliant on the grid, we're not necessarily going to have access to it. And then lastly, we actually gain the sustainability benefits as a result of doing all of these things. So you get so many win-win-wins that then compound, which then ultimately grow your enterprise value and really allow you to differentiate as a business and really stand out and actually then celebrate those commitments and wins that you've kind of come out and declared as goals in the early days.
One of the things that it made me think of as you were describing that is again, I've mentioned this previously, but just when thinking about a business's balance sheet, assets versus liabilities, and when deploying these on-site energy systems, these are assets, and so I think it's important for companies to look at it that way. Again, there's many other benefits, but oftentimes companies are deploying these at their own facilities, and it brings up the value of those facilities, and all of the other benefits that you just described versus purchasing renewable energy certificates or buying into offsets or these other schemes. And those are liabilities. These are costs that are doubled up, and we're also seeing the backlash. I mean, Delta unfortunately experienced this a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago around their carbon neutral claims, and consumers seeing through that or seeing that that's not in fact the case. And so we're going to see this happen more and more. We're also going to see the prices as they move from voluntary markets to mandatory markets or involuntary markets, being the price just continuing to go up. So why haven't we seen more companies deploying these on-site systems? I think with all the benefits, it's really interesting to see that according to the Solar Energy Industries Association, the most prolific deployer of on-site solar, which is Target. Let's shout out to Target. Well done. Way to take the lead and really show the world how this can be done. Yet they've deployed 583 systems, massive number of systems, 100 ahead of their next closest on-site solar deployer. Yet it's only a quarter of their facilities. And if we go down that list, the long tail drops off pretty quickly. And if we go all the way down, for example, to number 20, Wells Fargo, again, shout out to them for doing so many, yet they've only deployed 46. And one of the challenges that we've heard from business leaders that are trying to affect this change within their large organizations is they've found it challenging in the past to have the intelligence at their fingertips to be able to communicate and compete for dollars internally. This is just as investments and projects go to capital allocation committees, they've got to compete against operations and production and folks that are coming saying, we need a new manufacturing line or we need a new XYZ piece of equipment that have very clear ROIs. And now if you're just coming with a sustainability goal and a sustainability box to check, you might not get might not be capturing all the benefits that these systems provide. And so I think that's one of the things that obviously we're looking to solve is to help arm these leaders that are trying to do these systems with the intelligence that they need to go get all of the stakeholder buy-in internally to make it happen. And the leaders that are doing this are seeing outsized returns. One of my favorite examples is the largest IPO of the year, 2024. Many people out there may have never even heard of Lineage Logistics prior to their IPO. We've known them for quite some time, but they were the number one IPO of the year. And since 2020, they've been the number one deployer of on-site solar. They've deployed over 100 megawatts so far, and 80% of which has been since 2020. So, huge benefits that they are experiencing, not just on the sustainability side, but on the operational efficiency and operational cost side of things. And that's, not the only reason, but bearing out in the fact that they had a massive IPO earlier this year. So Gareth, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say, Dan, really good discussion. I think the reality is the energy transition and energy as an input to your businesses is the biggest generational opportunity for all of us to take advantage of. It shouldn't be a race to take shortcuts, to make quick announcements. This is definitely a journey that requires us to have a plan, have focus, dedicate to the success of it, and actually doing the real work. We definitely don't want businesses to stop making these big commitments, because it is absolutely awesome. That's what's going to drive the innovation. It's going to drive the action. But we also don't want people to make the big commitments and then knee-jerk react and look for the quickest, easiest path to success, and then set themselves up for those liabilities you talked about, Dan. So the key is making sure that we baseline where we're at, making sure we've got a very clear plan of where we want to get to, getting ourselves access to the insights, the intelligence, the workflows, the right partners, to then go and act at scale and deploy these systems, realize the benefits, monitor our progress, adapt when we hit those roadblocks, to the pigcock story, and really embrace and enjoy the journey, because there's a huge amount of success to be achieved, both as companies and as individuals. And we can actually have a very positive business impact while also creating a huge legacy from an enterprise perspective, but also from a societal perspective. And, none of us could expect to stand on the top step of a podium, even at our local races, let alone the Olympics, without putting in the work. So, we can't expect our businesses to thrive without doing that graft. And we're certainly not going to win by going after the superficial sustainability efforts. So the key to this is, let's drive real action, and we guarantee that you will reap the rewards, because there's huge opportunities for your business at every level of doing this right. And I think, Dan, it's been great to watch the Olympics from afar, but I know we're both super stoked to see it come into our backyard in a few years' time.
Certainly. And it's also making me feel like I need to hang up with you and maybe go hit the gym and get ready for my next local race. But let's put in the work. Let's help others put in the work. And I'm excited for seeing the Olympics in person here in 4 years.
Love it. All right. Have a good one.
Take care.
See ya. We receive a lot of questions from business leaders around the world wanting to learn more about the energy transition, what is possible, and where to start. So to help you stay informed and up to date on best practices, opportunities, risks, and success stories, we created an industry newsfeed at VECKTA.com/news with all our podcasts, blogs, and newsletter. Check it out and connect with Dan, myself, and the VECKTA team to learn more. Cheers and have a good one.